Ladies and gentlemen, with your kind attention and permission, I have the honor of presenting to you one of the most remarkable men in the world. How remarkable? He's swift.
Hello. My name is Fritz KO, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Fritz KO Vids.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Right, exactly. And it was very interesting stuff. And the way I see things, I think a lot of it probably did come from India to a large degree and diffused away from there. If you look at where people evolved, it's predominantly Kenya and Ethiopia. Those are the oldest pieces of bone that we find, that comes from humanity as we know it. But what's interesting is that if you look at Kenya and Ethiopia, it's on the east coast of Africa, right next to, the Indian Ocean. And this is, again, it's all ties in, like, you have stories of Mu and Atlantis and everything. I have no doubt that there's probably older bones further out in the Indian Ocean, like groups, that are even older, thousands of years. So we have stuff like that. We have no idea. There could have been, a different landmass that was raised and got lowered that people came from that are even older, or maybe, who knows, there could have been 5 different versions of people on an island out there. The island sank and then they spread out, and you had from there Chinese, India, European, and, African. But, who knows? I mean, that's one of those things you'll have to wait and ask God when you die. I don't know.
I understand.
But
yeah.
But
and
it does
one
make
thing
sense.
I wanted,
you look at the Pangrea and the idea of you could literally take the continents and stick them together like a giant puzzle, and they would fit perfectly. And that's without taking into account, raised and lowered land masses that have happened over thousands of years.
That's the $1 million question. When they were together, were we kicking around like we are now?
Right, really, and if we were, what were we? Who were we?
Well, they found big carvings, sculptures of human faces in the sides of mountains in Africa, and they don't look like Africans. They almost look like Indians or, Caucasians, and it's interesting. You know what I mean? Just like the ancient Egyptians, the rulers at least, the depictions of them, they look like, somewhat, at least Indians or Caucasians. They don't look like African Americans. And I've heard some scientists talk about that there's hominids on most continents. You know what I mean? Which is weird too.
Yeah, exactly. And it's very interesting, and I'm sure you've read or heard of it too, South America, they had stories of, bearded white people that came there, thousands of years, and that's what led to the Aztec and Mayan empires to, Aztec and Incan empires to, eventually get destroyed because they had this myth, this story of a returning bearded, red-haired god.
I've heard that before too, and they also said at times when they've needed people, a bearded Caucasian fellow would come and help them, you know what I mean, and show them how to build boats and do different things.
Yeah, and not only did it say that he was bearded, that he would have red hair and everything, like, they picked the year and they had like the date or something. I think it might even been the literal day that they were going to come, and that's when they did arrive. So
sounds like a Viking, red hair with a beard.
But again, like I think I don't have any doubt that you had diffusion from the east to our west from China. And I don't think there's any like there are pyramids, like you were saying, in China and other places. They have a flat roof. They're not pointy like the Egyptian ones. And that's what you see again over in South America and Central America. So I don't have any doubt that there was definitely diffusion there, but there was also a group in South America called the Olmec. And the Olmec, they might have had a written language, I don't remember, but whatever they had, nobody was able to decipher it anyhow. But the interesting thing with them is they have these giant heads, like carved heads of somebody that are huge. They're like 8, 10, 15 feet tall.
Almost like the Easter Island heads.
And they look like Africans. Like, I don't have any doubt that there was diffusion from Africa somehow and came over here.
Interesting, almost like the Eastern Island heads, you know what I mean? And it's hard to depict what they look like from if they're trying to characterize what they look like, because if they did, they were some interesting looking folks.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and again, the Polynesians out there, they were a seafaring bunch. Like, they used to routinely go miles in every direction. So
yes,
yeah, I have no doubt that they were, going up, out, and beyond. I'm sure they made it to South America. You might have even had Chinese that came to Polynesia and made it to South America as well. And people have to keep in mind there's also the jet streams in the air, and there's also, I'm not sure if they're jet streams that are in the water too, or what you call them, but they run, basically from the coast of China and Japan to California and Peru. Like, there's two different ones, and the same deal. We have not so much a stream that runs from like Norway to America, but we have one that goes basically from New York, I think, to the tip of Africa, the top part of Africa, maybe. So I don't, basically where the Straits of Hercules was, the Straits of Gibraltar is today. So I don't have any doubt, again, that you had currents and jet streams and everything else that, it could be done. Like, if they wanted to, and if they were blown off course and you survived, there's no doubt you could make it to America or Easter Island or Africa and back.
Very interesting. Another thing that was very interesting for me too was the fact that I never realized this until just recently, but you know how there was a thriving Native American cultures here that were destroyed by the Europeans. Also, Europeans in Russia destroyed a thriving native race there that was already there in Russia, and they were all over in the islands there in between America, over by Alaska in North America, or the North Pole. And they were really interesting seafaring people too, and they went all over the place, and they almost looked like the same type of people from Easter Island, the Polynesians.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt. I mean, it's really hard to tell. Like, when I was even a little kid, and they were like, well, the first people in America walked across the land bridge, and there's a whole theory with that it's like almost like land bridge centric idea. And to me, as a kid, unless the weather was really different, I find it hard to believe that people would want to go that way. Number one, for the most part. I mean, as you got more northern, it would get colder and colder. And I would think there'd be less to eat. Again, like, I don't know what the weather was like back then, but it just seems like, I'm sure there might have been, again, like a few people that made it that trip, but it just seems much more likely to me that somebody or other got blown off course and hit a current or a jet stream or a boat and the right time and of the year and the day, and they were able to make it to America. And there was probably male and female groups, and they procreated, and that's how you have your Indians and stuff today.
There's some ancient race.
Yeah, it just seems much more probable, I would say, that a boat or a couple of boats got blown off course and ended up, on the coast of California or the coast of Peru or what have you.
Yes.
Much more so than that somebody walked across the frozen land bridge, because in theory it sounds probable, but when you look at that break between Russia, Siberia, and our Alaska, yeah, that's a lot of room. Like if it's all ice, what were they eating? You have to wonder,
Yeah,
I just don't see it really happening like that. But that's my own personal theory. That's my own personal feeling.
I think it's a very good one, and definitely this our whole topic of conversation this evening is I found very personally interesting myself, because I've never really heard anyone discussing the topics in the way that we are definitely tonight. One thing I wanted to tell you, I just acquired. I'm sure you're going to get a kick out of this. I know you have a personal interest in antiques and whatnot. Is I have a London brass, British issued India naval compass from World War One.
How about that? Well, that's worth some money, I'm sure.
Oh yeah,
very interesting.
Supposedly $200 in mint condition. I've flashed some photos of it, and I'm currently flashing some now. So it's actually pretty neat in pristine condition. There's even a level there actually has a little bubble in it still too. So it's actually pretty nice. Yeah, buddy.
Very cool.
Would you mind? Would you hate to answer some questions from a YouTube subscriber?
Yeah, sure. Go right ahead.
Okay.
Would love to hear it.
I'm gonna go ahead and introduce him, and he's pretty new to YouTube. He has his own YouTube channel. His name is Luke. I'll let him introduce himself and tell you guys the name of his YouTube channel here.
Absolutely.
My name's Luke Vest. I have a YouTube channel. I'm fairly new, so I don't have much on there yet, but I'm working on it. I'm posting some new videos and doing some recordings and some interesting research lately.
Name of your YouTube channel?
My YouTube channel, you can find it by searching for jvesthaha at yahoo.com. I don't really have a name for it besides my name currently, so you can check that out though. I got a couple of videos, a funny thing that I posted, and a lot of people liked and wanted me to put it on there so they could watch it. And I'm more into some of the like top weird stuff that you can find around the world and that sort of thing. So
you had an interesting video that I watched. It was the top 10 what places?
It was a group of 11 weird, creepy places from around the world.
Very interesting. I like that video. You guys should check that out and check out Luke's YouTube channel. All right, so you know our topic here tonight. Did you have any questions for Ray?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about the ancient religions from India. I happen to be a little bit interested in that, and like the monks and stuff from India. I found them interesting.
Yeah, in India, their main religion is Hindu religion, and they have a host of like gods and goddesses and stuff. And again, like they have a whole cosmology of them, and it's also entwined with their early rulers and everything. And you'll see that with them, and I think China too also has a similar, where they have like a first ruler, and the ruler, I think it's a semi-mythical type. There's no real, concrete evidence for their existence, but there's also nothing that says that there isn't. But you could definitely end up being, more of an expert on that stuff, on the religious books and everything, just that alone.
Yeah, I don't know how many, isn't there like a couple hundred different gods that they worship in India? Not that everyone worships all of them, but they have a whole plethora of different individuals to worship, correct or no?
No, actually, it's way more than that. I believe it's something like 14 million gods and goddesses, and they're I think it's called polymorphic religion, where they have, more than one god, and we're monotheistic. Most, Christian religion, we believe in one God, Yahweh, Jehovah. And there's there's a couple. There's like Krishna, there's Kali, and there's a bunch of stories, where one god will basically kill the other, and there's parts of their body or their head will spring up multiple times. That's like Kali, and Kali, I think, means like Black Death or the Black One or something in Hindu. And all their stuff, their religious books, you really truly could be an expert on just that alone. And go on forever teaching classes just on that, because you'll get tied into it. What I believe they call their texts are called Vedas, I think. And you could just be an expert on the Vedas, and you would you would make money, but that would be a lifelong pursuit, just that there.
Nice. Luke, did you have any more questions? It's a very excellent answer, Ray, and I'm glad you asked that question, Luke, so we could fill in the blanks on some other answered questions for people out there watching.
Yeah, I'm glad you gave me that opportunity, because I didn't know much about the Indian gods and that sort of thing, but it sounds like they may have been the basis for the religion and gods and goddesses and like the Egyptians and Greeks and Romans religions as well.
That's a point that previous filmmakers like Peter Joseph and various different other individuals have made in the past too. That Mithra and some of these other guys, it's possible that they could be the basis for different other religious figures. Even some people have said even Jesus.
Well, there is a very small but strong connection between some of the Nordic gods and the Hindu gods from India. They have a character that's very similar to Thor, that's more like a sky god, and there's been parallels drawn between the two, which is also probably one of the other big reasons why Hitler sent some of his scientists to go and prove that point, because they really, the Germans really wanted to shy away from any idea that they had anything to do with the Middle East and or Africa or anything like that. They really wanted to propagate the idea that they were from a master race that were further north, but they got their linguistics from, the Indus Valley, and, it was an Indo-European thing. I guess for them, it was the lesser of the two evils in their mind, maybe. But in truth, it probably isn't far off. I would say, like I was saying earlier, I think, the majority of our written words and everything, and our math and algebra, it all pretty much probably came from the Indus Valley. I really don't see it, it may have, but I really don't see the two historically operating separately, where you had, algebra that was Arabic and algebra that was Indian. I'm sure, one probably influenced the other. And I'm leaning towards India. That's my feeling.
Man, yeah, there's so much interesting things we can talk about. Like, I think when we were talking about the text
Those are great
earlier,
questions. They really are. Those are some great questions you asked.
Yeah, they were, buddy. They really were. Yeah, another thing is I think it's Indian culture or some ancient Middle Eastern culture that comes out of the cradle, the birthplace, the cradle of human civilization, is that they haven't even deciphered all the ancient texts all the way. Because, like you said, there's a million gods. They have almost that many different ancient texts, like the ones that Nazi scientists said that they actually got the information that led them to create the first jet propulsion engine.
Right, exactly, and I have no doubt that there's tons of text, and again, maybe they're not being read literally enough. That, and they used to write, most of their stuff is symbolic for the most part. But if you look, a little deeper, you see a word like mercury, and you're dealing with something.
Complex.
All right, this is an actual physical substance. Like, what are they talking about here?
Yeah, if you're using mercury to create anything, some kind of combustion, that's definitely a complex process and engine there.
Right, exactly. And those Vedas, there's thousands of them, and they deal in a variety of subjects, and they'll usually deal with battles between, different kingdoms and everything. Because that's the other thing with India too, is like people think of India, as one giant nation like we have today, but in actuality, there was, I think, maybe 4 or 5, possibly 6 different ruling areas of India, because India is very huge at any given point. You had different, kingdoms within there. And today, even like when you go to India, their dialect, the majority is Hindi, but there's also many different dialects. You actually have, I think maybe 16 different dialects all across India.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, even though, say, everyone there can speak Hindi as the main point, you're going to speak, slightly different versions, probably a little more deeper, but a similar idea would be like if you're in America, yeah, you speak English, but when you go down south, there's such heavy slang. But I think even this is more in depth, like that's slang, but this is like a different dialect, it's an offshoot somehow, of Hindi.
Yeah, it's just like reminds me of China, kind of actually, we keep bouncing back and forth. There's so many different dialects there too as well.
Exactly. And too, like, you look at India, China, you probably had some diffusion there as well. Although in that area, I think, historically speaking, their prehistory probably did evolve separately. And the reason I say that is because the Huns, which is where Attila came from, which is the northern Siberia area, was a completely different dynasty than the Han dynasty, which is, further south. And basically the Hans were pretty much, and even to this day, the majority of the upper class of China comes from the Han dynasties, from the Han group. And the Huns basically would come in periodically over the hundreds of thousands of years and wipe out portions of their kingdom, and then they would go back, they would appease them somehow, and then the Han would grow even stronger again, and so on. But again, I think there was another dynasty, another group that was further south, and I forget their name, but very interesting. Again, like, people think of China as everyone's Chinese, but that's not really true. There's at least 3 or 4 different groups within China, all war with each other.
Oh, for sure. And then when you talk about the wars that they had with Korea and stuff, we're talking about things now that are probably just totally beyond the average Joe's, information base. But that's okay. You know what I mean? Interesting things for people to Google when they get bored.
I get lost in Wikipedia, honestly. Like, I'll be on Wikipedia and I will end up following one link to another link to another, and I just can't stop. I have to literally like turn the computer off in order to go to bed some nights.
I totally agree with that and sympathize. I'll find myself falling asleep, waking up in the middle of the night to just random information I'm reading or video I'm trying to absorb, and just from various different types of information. Well, buddy,
Yeah.
we're getting to probably the end of our show now, and I'm just wondering if there's anything else you want to talk about. Is there any websites you have that you would like to push here? Now is that time to do these things.
Well, not at the moment. Eventually, I'm going to put together some books on my ideas on prehistory and the interest of India and its diffusion of ideas. And there's also a couple other books on other subjects I'm sure we could tackle in future interviews. But I'm looking at the giants of America, the red-haired giants, the Sitaka, as they call them. I think that's a fantastic story. That's a whole other thing.
Interesting. Okay.
The missing 411 actually is very interesting to me. I've been finding that also ties in a tiny bit with India. I don't know, you and I spoke about it before, but there is an Indian creature called the Tangu, Engu. It's more known in Japan, but it started in India as an idea, and it's like this, semi-divine creature that has the ability to control weather, that takes shoes and clothing off of people, will pick them up and strand them places. It's kind of like, almost like a high-end trickster, basically.
Wow.
But also has like very malevolent feelings with human beings. And it's the only thing, like when I read the 411 books and hear the interviews, that ties in, exactly with, something historical or something, from mythology. It's the only piece of mythology that fits 3 or 4 of the points from missing 411 stories. And so my theory, my hypothesis is that this creature or spirit, whatever it may be, if it exists, it got its start in India. And then again, they also exist in Chinese literature. And then from China, the Japanese have the same creature. So you're kind of seeing, again, a diffusion and a movement from India to China to Japan. And now you have these cases here in America, like on the West Coast, along California and British Columbia, Vancouver Island, Washington State, that whole area. So, it's very possible that whatever this thing is, or, if it exists, and maybe it flew over here, maybe it came across the land bridge, it took a boat, who knows, like we were talking earlier. But it is the only thing that I've read about that fits the bill for the most part. So
it's really
I would love to hear what you and some of the
David,
YouTubers think on that too.
It's really interesting too, Ray. I mean, I made a video about it, and my YouTube subscribers have you to thank for bringing that information towards me too, after researching every aspect of it. I mean, sometimes it plays with people and tricks them. It's described as murdering people when they stumble across their lairs in the forest, which kind of fits in with a lot of mysterious different things that happen to people that have been found and have not been found, that have disappeared under mysterious circumstances here in America. And it does make you wonder, you know what I mean? And when you think about things like Mothman and some of these other things that people subscribe as being real and whatnot, it makes you wonder if there's something out there maybe that is just a little bit more of a complicated creature than even us. I mean, we like to think of ourselves at the top of the food chain. Who knows? Maybe there's something out there that possesses some type of skill to where it can hide from us.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, like when I read, Dave Paulides' books, the Missing 411, and hear his, interviews, I think he's grabbed a lot of different things. And the sense I get from all of those cases is the majority, 80% of the ones, particularly on the East Coast, the West Coast, mind you, where the mountains are, I think that's Tangu related. I think whatever that creature or spirit is and what it does, I think it's, that's all related to people that are found without shoes and everything. That's pretty much it. Now, when you get to the West Coast, when you get away from the West Coast, to the East Coast and where the Appalachian Trail is, that could be also Tangu related, but some of the stories, like the one girl in Michigan is talking about, her hat got taken off her head by a big dog, Mr. Wolf or something she calls it.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that could be Dogman related. I think there was maybe a couple other ones down like in Arkansas and Appalachia area that I think kind of sounds more like fairy-like people went in. It's the fake folk were known to take people too. So I think Dave hit on a lot of different things. But I think you have maybe 5 different culprits, but the majority, 80% are Tangu related. And, I'll tell you how I found that is I went to Google and I typed in, missing, mysterious, lost their shoes or something. I forget what the keywords were, but it brought up the name of the Tangu. And like in the little caption of Google says, Tangu takes their shoes. So I went and I looked it up and sure enough, like this creature, spirit, whatever, it seems to hit the, 3 to 4 points. So, and there's a show on right now. It's been on for, I think, 10, 11 years now called Supernatural. And that's kind of where I got the idea to start researching keywords on things like that. The 2 brothers in the show, Sam and Dean, will, to get an idea of what they're dealing with beforehand, before they attack it, they'll, do some research when they come to the town and find out like history and what it is they're dealing with. And that's kind of what Sam does. He'll go on and type in keywords and then see what comes up. And I did the same thing. And that's so far that particular story. And I believe there might even be a heavy dose of truth to it, because if you type in Tangu, they're in like tons of literature that's, Indian literature, tons of Chinese literature, Japanese. So I'm looking at that and I'm seeing a diffusion from the west to the east that way. I'm like, I have no doubt that this thing, whatever it was, could have made its way to America somehow, some way.
And when you look at some of the South American cultures, they do describe some things that are almost like a Birdman, and that's what sometimes this is described to look at.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say there was an interesting story on another podcast, and I hate to mention rivals or maybe any competition, but it was the Expanded Perspectives guys, and they had one about this family. It was a story, an urban legend from Kentucky, I think.
Okay.
And the family, had moved into the area, and nobody had heard of them. They never really came to town except for, like, I forget what it was like bird food or eggs or something. And the way the story went is that their cabin burnt down, and the people kind of gave the impression like they were bird people or something, like they looked human, but they weren't.
Dave is sometimes talking about people ask him about thunderbirds, and that is a conspiratorial, a type of cryptid type of creature that people suggest could exist. And maybe that and this are one and the same. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I believe that too. The Thunderbirds. Again, I think you got 2 possibilities, and I think that both are true. Like, I think in some places, and you got to remember when you go to, like, East Texas and North Texas and stuff, you can go for miles and miles, days and days, and not see a single soul.
That's very true.
And that's just on the roads. So
I've been in Texas before.
I think it's something like 80% or 85% of America doesn't have people in it, basically, like it's rural. And if you think about it, you look at a place like Texas and some place too, like Ohio, where, you have Indianapolis, Cincinnati, Youngstown, but then in between all of them, a lot of empty space, so there's plenty of room really to go running around. And I think you have 2 types of phenomenon with the Thunderbirds. I think there really are or were or could still be pterodactyl types that are still around. But then the other side is I think that there's, and I think this is true for probably 90% or more of all the esoteric stuff we encounter here on Earth. There is most definitely portals or doors that open or can be opened, and these things will pop in or out of, or they're able to manipulate them themselves.
I just read a story the other day of a gentleman in the 1950s, and I believe this was from Michigan. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But his wife came outside with something to drink for him. He was on his tractor. Not a lawnmower, a tractor. 1950s. And another gentleman was coming down the road on his tractor to come help him finish up work in a field, and they described it as he drove into a mirror, and he just straight up disappeared and vanished, and was never seen or heard from again, him or his tractor. You've heard of this one as well?
Yes, I have. That's an old story. Came from a guy named Ambrose Pierce who wrote the story, An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. And I believe he wrote an earlier short story that was something like The Mysterious Disappearance of Alfred Cole or something. But basically, yeah, he had that set, I think, in Kentucky or Tennessee or somewhere. But basically the story goes like he was walking across the field, he waved to him, and he disappeared. And there was like a round circle where he disappeared, and then within a year, like they would hear his voice and it would grow fainter over time, even though they had seen him.
Oh wow, I've heard that story too. I think
okay, so yours is different than that, or?
Yeah, because he was on a tractor, and another guy was coming on a tractor too down the road, and his wife was on the porch.
Mm-hmm.
And they said he disappeared into a mirror. This may be the same story. I do apologize if it is. At some point in time, we can all make mistakes here, and so I'm honest when I do. I may be making one currently.
Sure. Yeah. Well, a lot of times what happens with the stories and kind of like urban legends is the story itself is true, but the setting gets changed by time or just people, retelling them or what have you. And people, when they retell stories, they have a tendency to retell them, in their own area or what have you. I'll give you an example, like that story about the mafia guy that died and he was murdered and he's underneath the bed and then the couple find him. Usually that story is told as if it happened in Las Vegas, which it didn't, but it did happen in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and I know that for a fact because I remember the newspaper was on it happening in the 80s. So again, that's because the two have gambling in common, people tend to think, the story got told, well, it was, I think it was Las Vegas somewhere, but it didn't happen there, but it did happen in Atlantic City, though.
One thing I'm sure we can all agree on, and that is don't believe anything you can't prove with your own research, and do your research from multiple avenues, not just one place.
Right, exactly. The possibility of all this stuff, I have no doubt, and I don't have any doubt. I think 90% of the esoteric stuff we have in this world probably came through some kind of portal or wormhole that opened up where they, I'm sure like the UFOs have some ability to open up the portal at will. They have technological means to do that. But I do think that there are supernatural, dimensions and things that run parallel to ours, and every once in a while maybe a male and female version of something pops out. They can't get back, but they are able to procreate, and now you have dolphins here or something.
Yeah, they're trying to break that barrier right now. Scientists with technology and equipment that they have called CERN. I don't know if you're familiar with CERN at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Switzerland, I think, they have the underground one. I don't have any doubt that they're trying to break stuff. I actually think that they probably can, but again, I don't know what the results would be. I kind of get the sense if we were able to, I don't think it would be a good thing, basically, and I'm sure they're aware of that too.
Yeah, I understand, and you described that right about them trying to break stuff. One thing it seems like they're always trying to break is the back of the average Joe. The people that run this country and this world we live in. Boy,
that is true.
Boy, Ray, I really do appreciate you coming on the show this evening and the time you took out of your evening to spend with us all here. And I'm sure all of our listening audience would agree with that too. I want to take the time to let you wrap it up and sign us out here. If there's anything else you want to add in here, bud.
No, that was it, guys. I would love to come back on and talk about the missing 411, the Giants, and Dogmen. Those are my three favorite subjects, and I'm pretty well read and well schooled on all of them. So I'd love to hear from other YouTubers as well.
You're more than welcome to come on anytime you'd like, buddy. I'd love to have you back on, and I'm sure other people would too.
Excellent.
You have interesting information that not a lot of people do.
Well, I'm fairly well read, and I do talk to people, and I have sources, and I have a gut instinct for what feels right and feels real. And if it doesn't feel right or real, I probably won't say. I'll say, well, it's possible, but but I kind of get a sense for things, and yeah, I appreciate that, Fritz. Anytime.
You're a down-to-earth guy, and I enjoy talking with you as always.
Thank you, Fritz. Good to do it again.
Well, I'm glad you could both join me this evening, and I hope you guys have a nice night. And you viewers out there in the YouTube audience, don't forget to subscribe to both my YouTube shows, Fritz KO Vids and Factual Conspiracy. Check out Luke's new show. What's the name of it, Luke?
It's Luke Vest on YouTube.
Very nice. And go ahead and check out Ray Dennis Davis's future website, and I will advertise that in a later date when that is available for you guys when Ray comes on his show in the future. And so I'd want to thank you all for watching, and hit the like button and subscribe, and have a nice evening, folks.